In the spring of 1857, the British Empire seemed unstoppable. The East India Company controlled vast territories across the Indian subcontinent. Millions lived under its authority. Its armies were powerful, its finances immense, and its influence stretched from the mountains of Afghanistan to the Bay of Bengal. Yet beneath the surface, anger was growing. Princes had lost their kingdoms. Farmers struggled under heavy taxation. Religious communities feared foreign interference, and Indian soldiers, known as sepoys, were becoming increasingly distrustful of their British masters. Then came a rumour about rifle cartridges, a rumour that would ignite one of the most violent and consequential uprisings in colonial history. Within months, cities would burn, thousands would die. The last Mughal emperor would once again sit upon a throne, and British rule in India would face its greatest challenge before independence. This is the story of the 1857 rebellion, the uprising that nearly shattered the British Empire in India. Chapter 1: The East India Company's Empire. To understand the rebellion, we must first understand the world that existed before it. By the mid-19th century, India was not directly ruled by Britain. Instead, much of the subcontinent was controlled by the British East India Company. What began as a trading company had evolved into something extraordinary. It maintained its own army, collected taxes, governed territories, negotiated treaties, and fought wars. In many ways, it functioned like a state. After victories at Plassey in 1757 and Buxar in 1764, the company expanded rapidly. Kingdom after kingdom fell under British influence. Some rulers were defeated in battle, others became dependent allies. By the 1850s, company rule dominated much of India. But expansion came at a cost. Many Indian rulers lost their autonomy. Traditional power structures weakened, and resentment grew among those who felt dispossessed. One of the most controversial policies was the doctrine of lapse. Introduced by Governor-General Lord Dalhousie, it allowed the company to annex states whose rulers died without a biological male heir. For many Indian princes, this policy felt like legalized theft. Several kingdoms were absorbed into British territory. Among them was Jhansi, and its queen would later become one of the rebellion's greatest heroes. Chapter 2: Growing Discontent. Political grievances were only part of the problem. Economic and social tensions were also rising. Many Indian farmers faced heavy taxation. Traditional industries struggled as British manufactured goods flooded local markets. Artisans found themselves competing with industrial products imported from Britain. At the same time, social reforms introduced by the British created anxiety. The abolition of sati, support for widow remarriage, and missionary activity convinced many Indians that foreign rulers intended to reshape their society. Whether these fears were justified or exaggerated, they spread rapidly. Many believed that British rule threatened India's religions and traditions. Nowhere was this concern stronger than within the Bengal Army. The Bengal Army was the largest military force under company control. Its soldiers were largely recruited from high-caste Hindu and Muslim communities. These men valued their religious identity and social status. For decades, they had served the company loyally. But loyalty depended upon trust, and trust was beginning to disappear. Chapter 3: The Cartridge Controversy. The immediate spark of the rebellion came from a seemingly minor military innovation. The British introduced the pattern 1853 Enfield rifle. To load the weapon, soldiers had to bite open a paper cartridge before pouring the powder into the barrel. Rumors spread that the cartridges were greased with cow fat and pig fat. For Hindus, cows were sacred. For Muslims, pigs were unclean. Using the cartridges would therefore violate religious beliefs. British authorities attempted to dismiss the rumors. Some officers promised alternative cartridges. Others insisted the concerns were baseless. But by then, the damage had been done. Many sepoys became convinced that the British were deliberately trying to corrupt their faith. The cartridges became a symbol of everything people feared about foreign rule. One soldier in particular became famous. His name was Mangal Pandey. In March 1857 at Barrackpore, he attacked British officers during a confrontation. The incident shocked military authorities. Pandey was arrested and executed. To the British, he was a mutineer. To later generations of Indians, he became one of the first heroes of resistance. The stage was set. All that remained was the spark. Chapter 4. The revolt erupts. That spark arrived on May 10th, 1857. At Meerut, 85 sepoys had been punished for refusing to use the new cartridges. They were publicly humiliated and imprisoned. Their fellow soldiers watched in anger. That evening, rebellion erupted. Sepoys attacked British officers. Prisons were opened. Government buildings burned. European civilians were killed. The uprising spread rapidly. Most importantly, the rebels marched toward Delhi. The city held enormous symbolic importance. Although the Mughal Empire had long since lost real power, the Mughal emperor still represented legitimacy. When the rebels reached Delhi, they appealed to Bahadur Shah Zafar. He was over 80 years old, a poet more than a ruler, but his name still carried enormous weight. Reluctantly, he accepted leadership. Suddenly, the rebellion possessed a figurehead. The Mughal Empire appeared to live again. News spread across northern India. Other garrisons mutinied. Cities rose in rebellion. The uprising transformed from a military mutiny into a widespread political revolt. Chapter 5. Delhi and the spread of war. The capture of Delhi stunned the British. For the first time, the rebellion had a capital. The rebels controlled one of India's most important cities. Yet problems emerged immediately. There was no unified leadership, no single strategy, no central command structure. Different groups pursued different goals. Some wanted to restore Mughal authority. Others fought for local rulers. Some sought religious objectives. Others simply opposed British rule. Despite these divisions, the rebellion continued to expand. Across northern India, British authority collapsed. Telegraph lines were cut. Government offices abandoned. Military posts overrun. The company suddenly found itself fighting for survival. Meanwhile, British commanders gathered reinforcements. Troops arrived from Britain. Loyal Sikh regiments joined the campaign. Gurkha soldiers from Nepal fought alongside British forces. The struggle for Delhi became one of the war's most important battles. For months, British troops besieged the city. Disease, heat, and constant combat took a heavy toll. Finally, in September 1857, British forces launched a major assault. Street fighting raged through Delhi, house by house, road by road. The rebels resisted fiercely, but eventually the city fell. Bahadur Shah Zafar was captured. His sons were executed. The Mughal Empire came to its final end. Yet the rebellion was far from over. Chapter 6. The tragedy of Kanpur. One of the most infamous episodes occurred at Kanpur. There, rebel forces were led by Nana Sahib. Like many rebel leaders, he had grievances against the company. His claims to status and financial support had been rejected. When rebellion erupted, he joined the uprising. British civilians and soldiers sought refuge in defensive positions. For weeks, they endured siege conditions. Food ran short, disease spread, casualties mounted. Eventually, negotiations produced an agreement. The British defenders would be allowed safe passage. But as they attempted to leave, violence broke out. Many were killed. Women and children were later taken prisoner. Then came the tragedy of the Bibigar. As British relief forces approached, the captives were murdered. Their deaths horrified Britain. Newspapers reported the killings in graphic detail. Public anger exploded. Calls for revenge spread throughout the empire. The events at Kanpur became one of the most powerful symbols of the rebellion, and they would heavily influence the British response. Chapter 7: The Rani of Jhansi. Among all the figures associated with the rebellion, none became more legendary than Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi. Her kingdom had been annexed under the doctrine of lapse. Her appeals to the British had failed. When rebellion reached Jhansi, she found herself drawn into the conflict. British accounts initially portrayed her as dangerous and ruthless. Indian memory would later celebrate her as a patriot and freedom fighter. Whatever the perspective, her courage is difficult to deny. When British forces besieged Jhansi in 1858, she personally helped organize the defense. Cannons fired from the walls. Fierce fighting erupted in the streets. Eventually, the city fell, but Lakshmibai escaped. According to legend, she rode out with her adopted son strapped to her back. She joined other rebel leaders and continued the struggle. Her final battle came near Gwalior. Dressed in military attire, she fought on horseback against advancing British forces. She was killed in combat. Even her enemies admired her bravery. British General Hugh Rose later described her as one of the most courageous leaders of the rebellion. Today, she remains one of India's most celebrated historical figures. Chapter 8: British Revenge. As British forces regained control, retaliation followed. And it was brutal. Suspected rebels were executed. Villages accused of supporting insurgents were destroyed. Prisoners were hanged. Some were tied to cannons and blown apart, a punishment intended to terrorize opponents. The violence shocked many observers. British soldiers often justified their actions by pointing to atrocities committed against civilians during the rebellion. Yet the scale of retaliation was enormous. Entire communities suffered. Precise casualty figures remain impossible to determine. Hundreds of thousands may have died through fighting, executions, famine, and disease. The rebellion became one of the bloodiest conflicts of the 19th century. By 1859, organized resistance had largely ended. The British had won. But victory came at a tremendous cost. Chapter 9: The Legacy of 1857. Although the rebellion failed militarily, it transformed India forever. The East India Company was abolished. Its rule ended permanently. In 1858, the British Crown assumed direct control of India. Queen Victoria issued a proclamation promising religious tolerance and respect for Indian traditions. The British government sought to prevent another uprising. The army was reorganized. Recruitment policies changed. Greater emphasis was placed on loyalty and ethnic divisions within military units. Relations between rulers and ruled also changed. Trust collapsed. British officials became more cautious and more distant. Segregation increased. Racial barriers hardened. For Indians, the memory of 1857 endured. Different generations interpreted the rebellion in different ways. Some viewed it as a military mutiny. Others saw it as a struggle against colonial oppression. Still, others regarded it as the first major step toward independence. Whatever label one chooses, its significance cannot be denied. The rebellion demonstrated that British power was not invincible, and that lesson would inspire future generations. The rebellion of 1857 began with rumours, but it was fueled by much deeper forces: political anger, economic hardship, religious anxiety, and the growing belief that foreign rule could be challenged. For 2 years, India witnessed extraordinary courage, terrible violence, and dramatic acts of resistance. The rebellion failed to end British rule, but it changed the empire forever. The East India Company disappeared, the British Crown took control, and the memory of 1857 became part of India's long journey toward independence. The names of Bahadur Shah Zafar, Nana Sahib, Mangal Pandey, and Rani Lakshmibai continue to echo through history. Not because they won, but because they fought. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more incredible stories from the past. This is Region of World History. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep exploring